This is a scene from Chinonwe Chukwu's 2019 drama Clemency. On the table is Victor Jimenez, a death row inmate about to be executed for an unknown crime. The lights are bright, the beat is unnerving, the destination is known and dreaded. The scene is nearly unbearable to watch. It's a confrontation. While the movie actively recognizes the flaws of the death penalty, from botched executions to false convictions, Chukwu's critique goes further. By contrasting the sterile, medical nature of the execution with the act of killing a person, she reveals how the procedure of lethal injection is an artifice to mask the violence of capital punishment. In the paper Scenes of Execution, which evaluates the portrayal of capital punishment in film, Austin Sarad and his collaborators explain that modern capital punishment is characterized by the disappearance of spectacle. In essence, we have gone from the dramatic guillotines and electric chairs of the past to a scientific and detached procedure. Though capital punishment by lethal injection is flawed, it is supposedly not as barbaric. It is not hot-blooded revenge. It is discussed as humane and impartial. In the film, Chukwu reevaluates this assumption. The executions in Clemency are portrayed with excruciating realism, putting the surgical setting in stark contrast with the intimate experience of the inmate. The scene is paced in real time. Each step is methodical and slow. There is no music or distracting sound effects, only the loud silence of anticipation and the rhythm of the heartbeat monitor. The camera work is unobtrusive, bringing no attention to the fact that this is a fiction film. Finally, everything about the production is evocative of surgery, from latex gloves to needles and fluorescent lights. As the paramedic administers the drugs, he doesn't acknowledge or look at the inmate. The emphasis is fully on methodical and impersonal procedure. In contrast to all of this is the highly intimate experience of the inmate as he prepares for his death. Chukwu does not reveal his crime or his guilt. She merely forces the viewer to stare into his eyes using an overhead shot. His breathing is fast. His eyes aren't looking anywhere in particular, but they reveal panic with their sudden movements. The lack of music and sound mean there's nothing to distract the viewer from staring into his eyes and having to acknowledge his humanity. This dissonance between the inmate's anticipation of death and the setting reveals not only that the greater humanness of lethal injection is a myth, but that it masks the violence committed to a body by cloaking it as an impersonal medical procedure. In other words, the only difference between the firing squad and lethal injection is that the latter is less obviously violent. However, the psychological stress, the pain, and the final effect will be the same for both. At the very least, the firing squad does not dress up the violence. Lethal injection cloaks it in impersonal ritual, as portrayed in the film. This lack of acknowledgement of personhood, and therefore of killing, means there is no one to blame. But once again, Chukwu does not let you look away. Sarat's analysis of depictions of the death penalty borrows from Lacan's theory of gaze, which posits that the viewer is identified with the perspective of the camera, and therefore with any character's perspective the camera takes. According to Sarat, a common trend in depictions of the death penalty is putting the camera in the perspective of the convict, in order to put the viewer in her shoes. However, in Clemency, the camera never takes the perspective of the inmate. Most shots are framed from the perspective of the executioners or the witnesses. The overhead shot I referenced earlier seems pivotal here. Not only does it make the viewer look into Jimenez's eyes, but look into his eyes from the perspective of his executioner. With this shot, it could be said that Chukwu implicates us in the execution, and asks us, as Sarat puts it, to consider our own responsibility for state executions. This scene is difficult to watch. It's slow, silent, and painful. Not only does it demonstrate that the lethal injection is as violent as other methods, and perhaps more insidious because of its guise, but it implicates us in the act. After staring into Jimenez's eyes, it is still possible to support the death penalty, but it must be done in recognition of the violence that condones.